Hi, I'm Gene Benson. As part of my General Aviation Safety Initiative, I want to explain a little about our pilot capabilities as they compare to the various tasks that we need to perform as we fly. Every task that we perform has certain requirements necessary to perform the task successfully. If the person performing the task has inadequate requirements, the outcome is likely to be unsuccessful. And every task requires a certain level of capability, and that capability may require specialized training and experience to become proficient. But even a well-trained and proficient person in performing the tasks may be challenged by several human factors variables. These human factors can have a dramatic effect on capability, and that is the basis for the task load versus pilot capabilities graph. For pilots, we can look at a graph that plots the pilot capabilities and the anticipated task requirements for a flight. The space between the curves represents the margin of safety. We can see that a normal flight is anticipated here, and that the pilot capabilities remain fairly constant for the duration of the flight, but with a decrease toward the end, possibly due to fatigue. This graph illustrates the same flight with the same task load and with the same pilot. But in this case, the pilot has reduced capabilities for some reason. Let's say, for example, the pilot stayed out late the night before the flight and has some fatigue. We can see that the flight progresses well, but with a reduced margin of safety. Now let's see what the situation looks like if the task load remains the same, but the pilot also has a cold and perhaps took some over-the-counter cold medication. But as the flight progresses, the meds wear off and the cold symptoms return with a vengeance. As the pilot's symptoms return and his fatigue increases, his capabilities deteriorate further. Notice that the margin of safety gets pretty thin as the task load increases during the approach and landing. On this graph, the pilot capabilities are unchanged from the previous graph. But an event during the approach and landing phase significantly increases the task load for a few minutes. The event could be an airplane on the runway requiring our pilot to do a go-around. It could be an accumulation of structural ice as the airplane descends through some freezing precipitation, a passenger suddenly becoming ill, a landing gear or flat problem, or just about anything else. When the task load exceeds the pilot's capabilities, that, at least in theory, indicates that an accident will occur. The pilot's objective should be to increase the distance between the two curves. We can do that by reducing the task requirements or by increasing the pilot capability. If we're serious about being safe, every flight should begin with a risk analysis. There are several models out there for doing risk analysis, but what we really need to do is to think about the task load versus capabilities graph. If we honestly think about what the task load will be for the various phases of the flight, and then do an honest appraisal of our capabilities today, considering the PAVE checklist, including the I'm Safe checklist, we should be able to identify any areas in which the curves might come a bit too close together. I'm sure most of you are familiar with these, so I won't discuss them in detail now, but we can look at a few specific applications to the graph. Let's look first at some things that decrease our capabilities. Of course, the items from the I'm Safe checklist can all serve to decrease our capabilities, so we need to think about that in our risk analysis. But we can increase our capabilities by being well rested, being alcohol and drug free, and that of course includes over-the-counter medications. We can also help our cause by being current in the airplane and in the operations such as night, IFR, short field, gusty wind, and so on. A really good way to do that is to participate in a recurrent training program. Full participation in the FAA Wings program, including the flight activities, is a good way to use a recurrent training program. Next, let's see if there are some things we can do to decrease our task requirements, otherwise known as our workload. If our airplane is well maintained, there is less chance of having a mechanical problem, which would increase our workload. Thorough pre-flight planning means that there is less to do as the flight progresses. Having an alternate plan or plans greatly decreases the workload if the flight must divert due to weather, a closed runway, or for some other reason. So these are things to keep in mind if we want to have a large margin of safety, as large a margin as possible. Do a risk analysis, even if it's just an informal one, before each flight. Am I proficient in the aircraft, including the equipment and the avionics? Am I proficient in dealing with the flight conditions, such as night, windy, IFR, high density altitude, and so on? Have I considered the elements in the I'm safe and paved checklists? And remember, it isn't just about us. We must consider the impact of an accident on our families and our friends, whether or not they're in the aircraft with us. And we must consider the well-being of the people who live, work, and travel beneath our flight paths. So please visit my website, genebenson.com, where you can take free wings courses, read safety articles, join my mailing list to receive my free monthly safety publication, Vectors for Safety, and more. Also, please follow me on Twitter at Gene_Benson. Thanks for watching, and please remember, always fly like your life depends on it.